The timeline is important to note. We've been married for 3 years, but we were a couple for 2 years before that. So, altogether, we've been together for about 5 years. 2 weekends ago, my wife's sister got married, and as expected, my wife was part of the wedding party. In the 2 weeks leading up to the wedding, she was busy helping her sister with all the preparations. It wasn't a big deal at all. She kept me informed, and I knew this was going to happen. She took Wednesday to Friday off from work to assist her sister, and she actually stayed with her for 3 days. I'm acquainted with her sister, but I don't really know the guy who is now my brother-in-law. I've only met him a few times, but he seems nice enough. On Saturday morning, a few hours before the ceremony, I showed up hoping to steal a few minutes to see my wife. I didn't want to intrude on her busy day since I knew she had a lot going on, but I hadn't seen her since Tuesday. When she saw me outside her parents' house, she sent her brother out to let me know that she would come out and see me at the car. It struck me as odd, but I brushed it off. Finally, she came out and sat next to me in the car. She gave me a kiss, but instead of being happy to see me or showing any excitement, she told me that she needed to talk to me and didn't want it to spoil her sister's day. She proceeded to inform me that at the reception, there might be rumors or conversations about her and the best man. She wanted to let me know in advance so that if I heard something, I wouldn't be caught off guard. She mentioned that about 4 years ago, she had a brief fling with him, but it didn't mean anything. She was aware that I tend to get somewhat jealous, and she wanted to be upfront with me. So there I was, just sitting there, completely surprised by how my morning turned out. It wasn't what I expected at all, but I thanked her for telling me, even though it didn't seem like a big deal anymore. She went back inside the house, and I decided to grab some lunch before meeting her at the church. As I was eating and scrolling through my phone, it suddenly hit me. She mentioned that she had a fling with him 4 years ago, and we've been together for 5 years. Initially, I brushed it off, thinking she probably misspoke about the timing. But the more I thought about it, the more I remembered a period about 1.5 years into our relationship when she acted strangely. She was vague about her behavior, unavailable when she normally wasn't, and went on a couple of weekend camping trips with coworkers. Of course, it bothered me a bit, but I knew I had a long day ahead, so I went to the wedding and observed everything quietly. After the ceremony, there was a line where you congratulate the newlyweds, and the wedding party was also standing in line. I noticed my wife standing with some guy I didn't know at all, but the best man was there too. I just went along the line and acted as if it was no big deal. Finally, we reached the reception, but it took forever for them to arrive because of the photos. Eventually, she showed up and sat next to me. I decided not to say anything because I didn't want to ruin the day. However, instead of letting it go, she informed me that each of the groomsmen and bridesmaids would be dancing, and she would be dancing with him. I asked why, since they weren't partners for the party, and she explained that the maid of honor and her partner were actually married and wanted to dance together. At that point, I was more than annoyed, but I tried my best not to show it. Luckily, I had the sense not to drink because I know I can get angry when I'm drunk, so I decided to stay away from alcohol. She chatted with everyone around her, and then it was time for the dance. He walked over and offered his arm to her, and she got up. I tried my best not to watch and made a conscious effort to avoid it. When she returned with him, they were joking around like the best of friends. She thought it was a good idea to introduce us, and although I didn't tell him to buzz off like I wanted to, my greeting was probably less than friendly. Nevertheless, he didn't seem deterred and sat down to chat with her for a few minutes. The more they talked and reminisced about old times and places, the angrier I became. Eventually, I excused myself and went to the bathroom. When I came back, he was gone. She told me that she thought I was being rude, which was the last thing I wanted to hear at that moment. I told her that it wasn't the right time or place to discuss it, but assured her that we would talk about it later. She sat there for a moment and then mentioned that she was going to change her clothes. When she returned, she planned to tell her sister that we were leaving because I had supposedly ruined her day. However, she didn't want me to ruin her sister's day as well. I reassured her that I could make sure not to bother either of them for the rest of the day. I didn't want any unnecessary drama, so I preferred to stay. She went to change her clothes and came back all upset. Now, mind you, I hadn't said a single word to her. I even shook the other guy's hand. I guess I must have looked miserable, and that's what she based her judgment on. She was determined to leave, so I told her that if she really wanted to go, we could leave. However, if she preferred to stay, I would be more than happy to stay too. Alternatively, since I had my own car, I offered to leave so she could stay. At first, she suggested that we should stay, but then she changed her mind and told me to leave if I couldn't behave any better. I asked her how I was acting, and she claimed it was obvious that I was trying to be aggressive like a silverback gorilla ready to fight. I didn't know whether to laugh right in her face or feel offended. I went back inside and sat down while she socialized with the other guests. I ended up talking to her brother for a while, but eventually I found myself back at our table, chatting with her grandma. We both left the event at the same time, and I got home slightly before she did. I was sitting in the living room waiting for her when she walked in without beating around the bush. I simply asked her to tell me the story about this other guy again, and she repeated it, word for word, just like before. After sitting there and looking at her for a while, I finally said, "Are you absolutely sure about the timing?" She affirmed that she was. Then I reminded her that we had been together for 5 years, so this so-called fling happened well over a year into our relationship. What happened next is hard to describe. Instead of getting flustered, denying it, or anything like that, she simply said, "I know." So I asked her to clarify the situation, and she explained that they worked together and it was just a physical fling. She felt like our relationship wasn't in a good place at the time, and she insisted that she never had any feelings for him and had no intentions of leaving me. According to her, it was just some casual fun for a few weekends. She admitted that telling me now might have been a mistake, but she didn't want me to be caught off guard. To be honest, I didn't react the way she expected me to. We ended up having a huge argument, and it escalated when she accused me of acting like a child about the whole situation. She pointed out that we're married now and that this happened way before that, so it shouldn't affect our current life together. Well, here are 2 things I strongly disagree with. First, I firmly believe that this does have an impact on us. She freaking cheated on me, and it's infuriating that she doesn't even have the decency to feel guilty about it. Second, I hate it when someone tells me I'm acting childish just because I get upset. It really ticks me off because it feels like she's trying to act superior to me. I told her that I needed some time to think, but she insisted that there was nothing to think about. According to her, we still loved each other, and this whole situation didn't change anything. That conversation took place 2 weeks ago, and I still can't get over it. She's been making an effort to talk to me in the past few days, but I have to admit, for some reason, I don't see her in the same way as I did before all this happened. Part of me thinks that it's stupid to dwell on the past. After all, it happened a few years ago, and we're married now. We haven't had any problems since then. But then another part of me feels like I just discovered that she cheated on me, and it hurts so bad. What makes it worse is that instead of trying to understand my feelings, she's trying to make me feel guilty and sweep it under the rug. I honestly don't know what to do. Update. Firstly, I want to clarify something from my previous post that I didn't explain very clearly. It's not really significant, but for some reason, it bothers me that I left this part vague. The maid of honor, not my wife, was actually married to the groomsman who walked down the aisle with my wife. Some people thought my wife was trying to arrange the dance, but I can confirm that this part was legitimate. However, it doesn't mean she didn't attempt to manipulate the situation or offer to let them dance together. I just wanted to clear that up a bit. I'm here because I've received over 40 requests for an update since last week, and I want to thank you all for your concern. I wish I could give you some brave statement about how I stood tall and kicked her to the curb, but unfortunately, that's not what happened. To be honest, I'm stuck in a state of uncertainty. I'm in limbo, so to speak. There have been some recent developments, but they've only made it more difficult for me to make a decision. Last week, I was mostly angry, but as the weekend went on, I started feeling mostly sad. I wish I could just hate her and switch off that part of me that feels like I'm being taken advantage of, but it's incredibly hard because I still love her. and this situation is tearing me apart. Here's what's happened that's had some impact. She finally realized that I wasn't going to just get over this. That made her realize that I might actually want to end our marriage. This realization caused her to have a near nervous breakdown. Some people in the comments of my previous post mentioned that she might try to manipulate me in this way. And I admit, I was considering those words when I thought she was shedding fake tears. But it soon became clear to me that she wasn't acting or pretending. She was genuinely having a panic attack. This led to a trip to the emergency room, an overnight stay in the hospital, and now she's on new medications. She has a scheduled follow-up appointment with her doctor next week. This situation brought her family into the picture, and as a result, we ended up having lengthy conversations with everyone involved. When we arrived home, with her family in tow, I asked her what she wanted to do since there were a lot of people in the house. She said she wanted to spend some time with her mom, and I was totally fine with that. Hanging out with her dad or sister all day wasn't exactly my idea of fun. So I told her I had some work to finish up and would come home later. About 2 hours later, I received a text from her begging me to please come home and saying that she really needed to talk to me. So I wrapped up what I was doing and headed home. But when I arrived on our front porch, her dad was there and he asked if he could have a word with me. My anger was already building up, and I was ready for a confrontation if she had filled him with a load of lies. I mean, we're not best buddies or anything, but I've never had any issues with him, so I didn't want to be an a-hole who broke his daughter's heart. We sat down on our deck chairs, and he completely caught me off guard with what he said. It was the last thing I expected to hear. He informed me that she had told her parents about what happened, and he wanted to apologize to me. He felt like he had done a terrible job as a parent because he believed that her mindset was influenced by her mother. He loved both of them, but he acknowledged that they were wrong. He had actually expressed to his wife years ago that telling their daughters that anything before marriage doesn't matter was a terrible idea and a flawed set of values to instill in them. He made it clear that he wasn't there to defend his daughter's actions. Instead, he wanted me to understand that her words and behavior were a result of her genuinely believing that marriage was a completely different life. According to him, he and his wife had romanticized marriage to the point where their daughter couldn't grasp the realities of real life. Essentially, he was somewhat throwing his wife under the bus, which caught me off guard. However, it wasn't what I had expected to hear at all. We shook hands, and he expressed that regardless of my decision, he still held me in high regard. That moment made me feel really good. I walked inside and found my wife curled up in a ball on her mom's lap. It was evident that she'd been crying the whole time I was away. Her mom got up, hugged me, and apologized. She expressed her love for me and prayed that we could resolve things. At that point, my wife was lying on the couch, looking at me and still in tears. Now, I'm about to say something that might upset everyone, but I couldn't bear it anymore. I approached her, and we embraced for a long time while she repeatedly apologized. I know it might seem like a weak move on my part, but I have to defend myself by saying that just before this incident, I loved her wholeheartedly. I didn't want to see her in pain, regardless of what she had done. I didn't want her to suffer like that. Sure, it's possible that she was putting on an incredible act, but honestly, I don't think so. She genuinely appeared broken at that moment. After some time when she had calmed down, I asked her why she wanted me to come home and talk. She explained that she wanted everything to be out in the open, so I wouldn't feel lied to or manipulated. She wanted me to ask her questions, and although I wish I had prepared a list, I came up with a few off the top of my head. She was brutally honest with me, and I probably shouldn't have asked some of the questions because now those images are stuck in my mind. But to be honest, those thoughts were already there, and now I have confirmation. First, I asked for specific dates or at least approximate dates. I didn't mention my concern about the engagement because I didn't want her to change her story. Surprisingly, she remembered the exact timing. Thankfully, this happened earlier in our relationship than she initially told me, so we weren't engaged when it occurred. I can't express how relieved I was to hear that because the thought of it made me physically sick when someone mentioned it in my previous post. Next, I asked how many times it happened. She went into unnecessary detail, not just about the different dates, but about the instances of penetration. She thought that's what I wanted to know, not to be mean. This part of the conversation didn't help me at all and actually broke me down. In reality, it wasn't that frequent. There were only 3 different days it happened, but there were multiple occurrences during those 3 days. Then came the difficult part. Why did she do it? Now, I'm not the most masculine guy, and I'm ashamed to admit it, but I couldn't ask this question without starting to cry. I wanted to know why I wasn't good enough, why it was him, and why she didn't just leave me. It was her turn to comfort me because, at that moment, everything came crashing down on me. Her confession, the painful images of them laughing together, and now knowing how many times and where it all happened. She was talking during that time, but honestly, I have no idea what she said. I was too upset, and nothing she could have said would have made any difference anyway. After I collected myself, I simply told her that the betrayal was terrible, but her response when I found out was just as bad, if not worse. She agreed with me and apologized for calling me immature. She admitted that she honestly believed it wouldn't matter to me now because we were married. Hearing that made my blood boil again. I was about to say something in response, but she interrupted and said that after talking with her parents, she now realizes how wrong she was. Cheating is cheating, but she still believes that the happiness we've shared since getting married should count for something. I then told her that I felt like that happiness was built on a lie. This caused another breakdown on her part, and it almost led to another trip to the ER. But with the help of Ativan and having her breathe into a paper bag, we managed to calm her down. I let her sleep for the rest of the night because emotionally we were both exhausted. But come Sunday, we started talking again. By that point, my sympathy had dwindled since we returned from the ER. I expressed to her that I thought it was awful for her to introduce him to me. Watching them dance together was even worse. And the fact that she only told me because she was about to get caught was a whole new level of awfulness. I then demanded to know why she thought I would find out and how many damn people at the wedding were aware of it besides me. Well, obviously the guy knew, but his best friend, who happens to be my brother-in-law now, go figure, also knew. And as a result, her sister found out, and she was worried her sister would be the one to spill the beans. I asked her how often she sees this guy, and she claimed that the wedding was the first time she had seen him in 3 years. That's when I lost it, and asked if she slept with him during any of the events leading up to the wedding. She got all defensive, acting like she wouldn't sleep with anyone because she was married. I couldn't take it anymore and had to leave for a while because once again, I felt like she was living on some kind of married planet where the rules are different from the rest of us. Eventually, I managed to cool down enough to come back home and try to maintain some civility in our conversation. Finally, she asked me what she could do to help me get through all of this. It may not seem like much, but it was the first time she genuinely offered to support me, so it was at least a nice gesture. I told her I wasn't sure if there was anything either of us could do, or if I would ever truly get over this. She expressed her desire to help because she didn't want to see me suffering, and she hoped that over time I would be able to judge her based on who she is now. She emphasized that she would do whatever I wanted to make things work. Additionally, she wanted me to be aware that she has been completely faithful since we got married and would never break her vows. In a sarcastic tone, I thanked her, although I admit it wasn't the most mature response. Afterwards, I requested a break from further discussions until at least Wednesday. I have 2 projects that need my attention, and honestly, I'm just exhausted. I have no idea what I truly want to do. My emotions fluctuate between intense anger, where I feel like kicking her out, and deep emotional turmoil, where I consider moving forward and forgetting about all of this. I understand that this may not be the news anyone wanted to hear, and I'm not proud to admit it, but this is the reality of the situation at the moment. Update. For those of you who have been asking for an update, here's a quick summary. I've been staying with my brother for a little over a month, and I can't say enough good things about him. He has gone out of his way to help me, and it has given me a newfound appreciation for him. We were close growing up, But this experience has shown me that our bond is even stronger than I thought. Now, the big news is that I have served her with divorce papers. Before those of you who wanted me to end things start celebrating, let me clarify something. I consulted a divorce lawyer and explained everything to him, including the fact that I didn't actually want to go through with the divorce, but I wanted to have everything prepared just in case. He drafted a divorce decree and made 3 copies, one for his records, one for her, and one for me. I decided to personally deliver the paperwork to her because I knew she would be upset, and I wanted to explain the situation to her. I handed her the papers in a manila envelope and made sure she understood what it was before opening it. I also made it crystal clear that I wouldn't proceed with the divorce unless we both failed to meet the conditions we agreed upon. I explained that I was committed to our relationship, but I needed to see that we were making progress and that the papers were only a precaution in case she doubted my seriousness. Well, let me tell you, things did not go as planned. Looking back, I realize it was a mistake on my part. You see, she had been trying her best to fulfill our agreement. We had even gone on several enjoyable dates together. In other words, my timing couldn't have been worse. Although my intentions were good, it seemed like I wasn't recognizing the effort she was putting in to make things work. As a result, she had a major anxiety attack that her medication couldn't calm down, so we had to rush to the emergency room again. This time, they gave her a shot and sent her home, and we both agreed not to involve her family this time. I stayed with her for 2 days just to make sure she was okay. Of course, this incident came up during our counseling session, and let me tell you, I came across as a manipulative a-hole, which, looking back, I must admit I was. Eventually, I took my copy and her copy of the divorce papers and tore them up right in front of her. She doesn't know about the 3rd copy, but I plan on having it discarded as well. Now I can't help but feel like a monster. The look on her face when she received the divorce papers was absolutely heartbreaking. She was so happy to see me that day, and then I handed her those papers, and instantly she was filled with sadness and fear. I never want to witness that combination of emotions on her face ever again. Apart from that hiccup, things have actually been going pretty well, and well enough, in fact, that I'm moving back home this weekend. My brother has been awesome. But let's be real, I'm cramping his style no matter what he says. Gotta admit though, playing Xbox every night has been a blast. But the main reason I'm going back home is because she has done everything I've asked of her, and I've put her through nightmare. I think she's suffered enough, and she knows just how serious this whole situation was. Oh, and in case I didn't mention it before, I do love her. She made a stupid and selfish mistake years ago, but aside from that, she's been almost the perfect wife. I apologize if I'm disappointing some of you, and I'm sure I'll receive more private messages telling me I'm a jerk and a disgrace to all men. But hey, you don't live my life, and I don't live yours. So this should be the end of it. And hopefully, there won't be any more updates moving forward. We're not magically cured or fully healed by any means, but we're on the right path. It's going to take time, patience, and understanding to get through this.